and former Chief Security Officer to late General Sani Abacha, Hamza al-Mustafa, has warned of the activities of non-state actors trying to destabilize the country through violence ahead of the 2023 general elections. Mustafa made the allegations at a security roundtable in Abuja. Arise correspondent Ferdinand Roja reports.
At this roundtable to discuss contemporary security challenges and their effect on the 2023 general elections, top issues on the front burner include the prevalence of underage registration, media freedom, and the activities of non-state actors preceding the elections. The lead speaker is retired Major Hamza al-Mustafa, who is a former chief security officer to the late head of state, General Sani Abacha. He warns that the proliferation of weapons and illicit drugs in the country less than 100 days to the general election raises a lot of concerns.
As of today, all the agencies in Nigeria, and I'm sure the representative of the IG, if he's aware of what I'm going to talk about, new discoveries of movements of drugs, arms, is coming into Nigeria through numerous borders and in large quantity. I'm talking of now as I speak. But I'm sure the society is not aware. The question is, at whose instance are these new weapons coming in? Why the increase? Who are the vendors? Who have sent for it? Is it politicians? What is the plan? Can election hold? Has actually the friction started between political parties and or candidates and their supporters? The question is, who is sending the arms to reinforce the insurgency or to reinforce the political side of it?
But a representative of the Inspector General of Police assures that the Nigeria Police Force is prepared to provide a conducive atmosphere for the conduct of peaceful elections.
But I would like to bring you a message from the Inspector General of Police, which is that the police and other security agencies, and indeed other stakeholders, are working hand in glove to ensure that the elections come 2023 would come and go, and it will be peaceful.
Because election is very, very close. So and if you look at the emerging security challenges across Nigeria, like in the northwest, southeast, these threats, like particularly in the southeast, were not there in the last election. So the intention is to bring stakeholders together so that we can discuss these issues and chart a way forward for the peaceful conduct of this election.
The roundtable is one of the many platforms being organized to raise awareness and scrutinize candidates ahead of the elections. Ferdinand Roja, Arise News.
It's a time to be discussing this with defense and security expert and the CEO of security firm Beacon Consulting, Dr. Kabir Adamu, who's joining us tonight on Newsnight. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Where do we even start on this issue of security, securing Nigeria? Is it the question whether Nigeria is winning the war against insecurity? Or there's alarm raised by former CSO to the late Abacha, Mustafa, who's saying, matter-of-factly, that look, as he speaks, that the borders arms are coming into the country. And he raised very, very germane questions. Is it
what are they for?
What are they for? Who's sponsoring them? Who's bringing them in? Is it about the elections that are coming up or what? What do you make of it?
Thank you very much. Incidentally, our October report showed a decline in the number of fatalities by about 20-25% between the month of September and October. So clearly there is an improvement, but an improvement in what, if to put it in context, we're talking of from 800 to 600 persons being killed in a month. So the figures are still high and it's worrisome. Now speaking about the statement made by Al-Mustafa, very concerning statement. I'm a little bit worried about the platform that he made that statement. We're at a time when we should galvanize efforts to ensure a credible 2023 elections when you are in front of an audience that frankly is the whole of Nigeria, and you make such statement, I don't think the objective of, especially someone who wants to, who is a presidential candidate, is to create alarm. Rather, I think if he has intelligence, which is what he seemed to have suggested, I would have been happier if he had shared it with the security agencies. Because the idea of working together, as you know, we're all Nigerians, we don't have another country to run to. If you have that kind of information, share it with the intelligence agencies, especially for someone who has been a CSO under a military dictatorship, who understands the implication of some of these statements. So I think not just for him, a lot of our leaders who have been making such statements that frankly are alarmist, I think this is the time to take a step backwards and realize the consequences. We all want a free, fair and credible election. Some of these statements are not going to help in that regard, unfortunately.
Yes, indeed. I'm even more particularly with the reports from the Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, who don't disclose quite a number of issues. The jailbreaks in Nigeria between 2015 and now has been very alarming and the rest. And the worst of them, of course, was the Kuje jailbreak, where in their hundreds, or let's just say in their numbers, terrorists, Boko Haram members, ISWAP and the rest, you know, forcefully released their members and the rest, and we've not talked
over 600 or 800.
Yeah, and they're still roaming, you know, the country freely and the rest.
A lot of them have been recovered, for lack of a better word. Unfortunately, the report is not public yet, so we don't know how many were actually recovered. But what is even more important is who is being held to account for that occurrence. Now, the minister is telling us that two reports, the report from his ministry and from the service that I'm hoping have been collated, have now been handed over to Mr. President. Now, one of the things that we generally agree as, you know, experts within that sector is the lack of accountability within that sector. So we're hoping that in the twilight of this administration, that they change that narrative, that certain persons are held accountable for this embarrassing moment in the history of our country, where a ragtag group of gunmen came into the capital, succeeded in releasing their members from a custodial center. Until date, none of them has been arrested or, you know, as it were, either killed. So somebody needs to be held accountable, and I'm hoping that the result of this report eventually would lead to that. Starting from you know, the highest person within that ministry, the minister himself. He was superintending that ministry when that incident happened. Now, the second thing, which I think is absolutely important, he was reeling out a scorecard. The scorecard is a process. First off, I'm imagining that key performance indicators were identified clearly. I'm also hoping that those key performance indicators were tied to certain activities. I'm also hoping that there are monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. But what is important for me as a Nigerian is the output of those activities. Is there a correlation between the output and then those activities? So as an example, how many jailbreaks happened while he was minister? What were the reasons for those jailbreaks to have occurred?
The Kafi jailbreak.
So many of them.
Yes,
I can remember
times,
Jos, I can remember Ondo State,
Sure.
Kogi State,
Yeah.
then Abuja. So all of this, I think, would need to be put into context. Have they been corrected? If they've been corrected, what were the gaps that were exploited by the groups that carried out that? Some of them, based on my understanding of the sector, are internal, others are external. So I don't think the kind of statements I had are enough to pacify me as a Nigerian, both in terms
or even
of...
give you confidence.
Again, like I think it's absolutely important that
you don't want to be an alarmist, but the truth must be said. I mean, if there are security gaps here and there, and quite a number of Nigerians can't really get to the people in charge, what do? I mean, a public forum like Al Mustafa did.
He's not just an ordinary Nigerian. He's someone who has held a position. He's got contact within the security sector. There is a lot he can do than come in. I respect him a lot, and I appreciate what he may
Great
have been
point.
trying to do. But I think it's absolutely important that we take a step back in this period. We're just about to have an election, and everybody's effort should be geared towards having a free, fair and credible elections, especially our leaders, because people listen to them, they are followers.
Now, I mean, Beacon Consulting that you had, you've over time, you've been looking at the security situation in the country, where it's vulnerable, the most vulnerable areas and all of that. I was reading that some experts, have expressed concern about Nigeria, the security situation in Nigeria post-election violence. And they're saying there are some flashpoints. Are you making any such reading? What are you coming up with?
So the beauty of what we have...
and I'd also like to add, before you land on that, this idea of trying to improve, Nigeria's defense production through harnessing local capacity, no better time to come up with this.
I agree totally. So let me start with the hotspots, quote unquote, for the elections. As an organization, we've done our part. We've identified certain hotspots. I can also tell you that INEC has done their own part. And more importantly, the managers of our Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, at least the chairpersons within that framework, the Office of the National Security Advisor and the police have also done their own assessment. In fact, the most recent one by the police happened in Imo State on the 30th of October and ended on the 4th of November. So there are processes that are ongoing, not just to identify the hotspots, but to make sure that the threat factors within those hotspots are taken care of. Now, unfortunately, only time will tell if those efforts are genuinely implemented or not. But I am, as someone who is in the sector, satisfied with the processes for identifying, for evaluating, and then mitigating the risk factors within the element. One thing that I consistently would say is that INEC needs to take ownership of the risk. I cannot fancy a situation where the electoral umpire, as it were, lets go of the risk management process to other organizations. What do I mean?
Right.
That committee, ICES, Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, is co-chaired by the Inspector General of Police and the National Security Advisor, understandably so, because INEC does not have its own security personnel. But INEC is the manager of the elections, is the electoral umpire. For it to manage those risks, it has to have the capacity. So two things I'm hoping to see happen. The department of INEC responsible for security and the department of INEC responsible for risk management, I want to see a convergence, and more importantly, an increase in their capacity of risk management. The easiest thing to do, and it's a low-hanging fruit, bring in experts that can help improve that capacity.
Like yourself.
And manage the situation.
Absolutely.
No better place to drop the anchor. Thanks so very much, Malam
Kabir
Adamu, security expert.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.